Hello everyone, welcome to Lighthouse Stamping with Lorraine. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Vancouver, Washington, USA. Today we're going to be making a card with Regal Reindeer. I love this set, it's beautiful. But before we get started, the housekeeping notes. In the description bar below, you will see the products I'm using, the dimensions. You will also find a link to my online store. If you need a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, please consider using me. You'll also find my email address, so if you have a project you'd like to see or any questions, please send me an email. There's also a link to our Facebook group. We'd love to have you join that. And please remember to subscribe and like and share to help me grow the channel in the YouTube world. So let me show you what we're going to be making. We are making this card. I'm going to hold it up. It has a lot of snow on it. And the inside of the card looks like this, which is quite simple. But anyhow, this is the card we're going to be making. I thought it was rather cute. So I'm going to set that aside. Oh, and the envelope simply says Merry Christmas on it. And matter of fact, I did not grab the Merry Christmas stamp out, so we will do that right now. If you hadn't seen this set before, we have two reindeer. We have, I'm saying it's a little girl, a bunny, trees, two sayings, or three sayings, Merry Christmas, peace on earth, and wishing you a wonderful season filled with all the good things that warm your heart and lift your spirits. And then we have two snowflakes, and we have a little snow indentation, and I'm going to be using that. And then there's dies. There's dies to cut the tree. There's dies to cut both reindeer. Then there's a reindeer standalone die. There's a present. This is, I believe, a harness for this reindeer. There's a standalone tree, that little girl. Some more presents, a star, some snowdrifts, a fox. There's a second snowdrift die, which I've already taken out because we're going to be using that. So it's a really wonderful set. You can make a lot of really cute cards with this. So the first card I made in Orchid Oasis. This card, I'm going to get all the pieces out, we're going to make in Starry Sky. I wanted to have something a little darker. Oop. And so we have our envelope. I have pre-cut and colored our reindeer and a little girl. I didn't figure you needed to sit and watch me color these. I will list the colors that I use, but they're pretty easy. It's Balmy Blue, I think it's Sahara Sands, Real Red, just real basic coloring. I did not do anything fancy on it. And these were stamped with Evening Evergreen, 2 generations, because I wanted to get the second tree to look like it was further back, and I'll show you how we get that to go in a few minutes. So I just did those parts just to help speed this along. Then we, of course, have our cardboard base, which is standard. It's, 8.5 by 5 and I can't even talk again today. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then we have a white piece for the inside of our card, and a couple extra in case I messed up. And then we have some small scraps that we'll be using. Now these small scraps are actually cut to a certain size. I'll go ahead and tell you what those are right now. We have one at 1 1/4 high by 5 inches, and then one at 1 inch by 5.5. And the reason you need those is so we get the tiered look of the snow, and you'll see that in a few minutes. And the other scrap is to stamp our Peace on Earth. So let's do some basic stamping before we start for the inside of the card before we start going. So first we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and stamp Peace on Earth, and we're going to do that in Starry Sky. just going to tuck it right here in the corner because we're going to hand cut this one out. We're not going to use a die. We'll set that off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to grab another block real quick because I did not get the Merry Christmas out. We're going to go ahead and stamp our envelope. Usually I put something else, but I thought it was sort of nice to put Merry Christmas on the outside since I did not use it on the inside. And the last thing we're going to stamp is, in Starry Skies, is Wishing You the Wonderful Season, which I think is a beautiful verse. We're going to put it in the middle towards the top. And that should be all the Starry Sky stamping we're going to do for this one. Next, we're going to grab Evening Evergreen, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper to stick underneath here because we're going to make one of these partially off. Well, actually, both of them are partially off. Ink this up, and you can use any other color green you want. I just like the evergreen color. It reminded me of the Douglas firs here. And I'm just going to set that just sort of off to one side. Make sure you give it a good press so it comes out nice and clear. Now the next time I'm only going to ink up about halfway. And I'm going to come down here and just put a little bit in the corner. Like that. So that way we don't have real big trees. Just nice small little trees. So that's the inside of our card. And while we've got this open, we might as well just, we might as well just go put it in there right now before we get some messy stuff going. Because we're going to be playing with some Pearlized enamel dots, and we're going to be playing with the Snow Puff paint. And guess where this is going? The garbage can. Yeah, they do run out eventually. Oop. And we'll go ahead and center that in there. Just like that. That's the inside of our card. I didn't burnish that very well. Let me try that one more time. It should stay flatter than that. There we go. Okay. So that's all the gluing for now. Now we have to build our snow here. And I'm going to show you how I do that, or did that. So we're going to get a little cranky out. And I have the two different sizes I told you about. I did cut me an extra one, just in case. And we need our cutting plates. See that? And I'm going to set this on here. And I'm going to start at one side. You can see this here. And I'm going to take it up so it's still inside of here. And what did I do with this? I usually use Post-its, but on this one I found it easier to use a little bit of washi tape. And de-sticky it a little bit. That. So you can do this two ways. I found it easier. You've got this here. You could stick this on here and run it through the machine one more time with this little piece like this. Okay, we'll go that one this, and I'll show you the other one the other direction. There is another way though. You have to line it up and then tape this down, and this is going to stick out, you know, the back end of it. but it does work. Now, if you're going vertically on this, you wouldn't have a problem, but I wanted to go horizontal because I wanted to be able to get all of my elements into the picture. And of course, I'm too straight for Cranky here. Hang on. You know, little Cranky, he likes to be offset, and if I don't get it right, he won't work. Be careful though when you go through that you pull this straight out so you don't bend your die. Now this cuts in, this cuts into this, but it does not, it leaves the bigger piece at the bottom. So the other one, we're going to cut the same way, but I'm going to show you the other way you can do this. We're going to do the exact same thing. And you're going to say the mounds are all going to be lined up. They're not going to be because we're going to flip the paper over. But I'm also going to show you the other way of cutting this if you want. You should cut the one side out. Set that like that. Get that out of my way. You can do this two ways. You can do it freehand, or you could take this die and a pencil, which my pencil's grown legs today, and draw right along there. Or if you're really good, you probably could do this. And just do it that way. So you can run it through, again, lining it up, or you can just fussy cut that little bit there. Which fussy cutting was not that difficult. So now we have two snowbanks. One, of course, is taller than the other. And they look a little lined up, so we'll just take this front one and move it. Now the paper is sometimes a little textured on the back, but that's okay, it's snow. Now I know when you cut a die, it leaves the rough edge, and I didn't want the rough edge. So just take your bone folder and go along that rough edge. No rough edge. It's pretty easy to get rid of the rough edge. Okay, so then we're going to grab a dauber. You can use your blending brush if you choose to. And we're going to start making this look like snow. So first what we're going to do is just grab a little ink. And I'm just going to go along the, flick a little bit along here. You could use Pool Party for this as well. But I think Balmy Blue has that icy look like snow does after it's been sitting out and people have been walking through it and stuff. It's that icy blue color. Just like that. So that took care of that part. It's not much, but once you start layering them, it will make a big difference. So first thing we have to do is layer these pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the largest one, and I'm going to see where the small one comes in to make sure. Actually, you can start with the small one too, because we are going to use seal on this, which I did not grab. Just one moment. I knew I forgot something when I was setting up to do this. I forgot to grab my seal. Here he is. So we're going to run seal along the bottom of this piece. And we're going to set it right on the bottom edge of the card. Now, I got one side that's a little longer, and that's okay, because we can come back and trim it. It's better to be longer than shorter. Now this one, we definitely only want to get the bottom piece. And then, we're going to take this, since you only glued the bottom, you can get in here very carefully. You can actually lift it up. You just have to go far enough that you're like that, covering up the blue. And then you can just flip it over like this. So I would recommend cutting them a little wider than 5.5. It's easier to trim than to have one too short. Okay, so now we have that. Next, we have to put all of our pieces in. First, I put the trees in. I have one darker, one lighter. Now, this one, when I cut it, it was a little white, but I'm not going to worry about that because I'm setting it into the trees. And we're going to set that one right about there, just not too far from the top. I'm going to go back to my glue on this one. Come on, glue, it's a brand new bottle. I'm going to set it right about there. Now this one, we want it to be in the back, shorter, and look like it's shorter. So I'm cutting off about to the second branch up, about like that. Because what we're going to do is put glue on it, and then we're going to tuck it about like that. So he's sticking down below the the snow, to make him look like it's further back, and he's lighter in color. Let's give some depth to the card then. So by using the seal at the bottom, we have that ability to tuck and slide that in there like that. Okay, so that's the dead tree. Next, we're going to put on our piece on earth. And this one I just did very simply. I just put it in the corner and made a little banner. Didn't want something fancy, or I just wanted a little thing that said Peace on Earth. And we'll put that up in the corner here. Next, we're going to get dimensionals to put on these guys. And we're going to use big ones and little ones. We'll put big ones in the bigger areas, like you can put one in the center here of the little girl. And if you think it's a little boy, then you can call it a little boy. I say it's a little girl. I don't know if anybody's ever watched, I know it's a Hallmark movie. It's with Sam Elliott and, God, I can't think of the other guy's name. A couple big actors. But anyhow, it's called November Christmas. And there's a little girl in this movie, and I'm not going to give the movie away if you have not seen it. I suggest you do. It's actually free on Hallmark right now. Anyhow, this little girl looks like this little girl, and she's looking into a snow globe, and this is how she looks. I mean, up to holding her hands up. And that's why I say this is a little girl. So, it's Christmas time. If you want a good movie, I should tell you that it is a tearjerker, but you'll also laugh. And gosh, I can't think of his name. He was in Northern Exposure. You're all probably screaming his name to me. It'll come to me after I'm done with the video. So I've put some glue dots here and there on him. And I want to put the reindeer on first because her little apple, I think it's an apple or ornament, she is handing off to the reindeer. But I'm going to take her to see where I'm setting. So I want to make sure she's sitting right. So I want them both sitting in the snow. Oh, about right there. Like that. And the little girl. And if you noticed on my last card, I did the little girl in Highland Heather. But this one, she's in, she's got to come up a little more and over just a hair. Like that. Okay, now the fun stuff. I'm going to show you some things and some things I learned. This is the Pearlized Enamel Effects, and this is the puff paint. I've really never played with puff paint before in my life. This was my first year with it, so it was a lot of fun. And I've used this before, but I've never put it on something that had been stamped. So I'm going to bring the other card back again. And I'm going to come really close. If you look at the trees, my white dots are green. Don't put puff paint or pearlized pearls on something you have stamped with ink, because they will turn the color of the ink. So now if you want a color on something and you want to do, that works great. It becomes a lighter shade of whatever it was. I personally don't think that the dots on, the green dots on the tree look bad. Looks like they're just glistening with snow. But yeah, does work. Also, if you're going to be using both of these together like we're going to be doing, you want to take and do the puff paint first and the enamel dots last. Puff paint, you're going to heat up until it shows its puffiness, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then the enamel dots, once you get it done, you're going to flick the bottom and you need to leave the thing set and dry. I let that dry about 2 hours before I picked it up and turned it to make sure nothing was going to move on it. But I've also determined that you need to let it really set overnight just to make sure it hardens well before you shove it in an envelope. So, on with the puff paint. With puff paint, you need to shake it really well. And I'm going to reach down here and grab my trusty heat gun. And you could do just all puff paint too. You don't have to do both. I just thought this would be a fun technique to try. Oh, I forgot something before we do puff paint. I forgot to mark the places where they're standing and where the tree is. There is a little teeny stamp in here. And it looks like, so you put it right under her feet. Looks like she and the little reindeer are like that. And I'm going to put a couple around the base of the tree, because the trees do leave a little shadowing effect. But I'm not putting any around the bottom of this one because, you know, he's not going to have a shadowing effect because he's too far away. So you want to do that before you do. So this is the two last things you want to do on this card. Sorry about that. I just looked down and seen I hadn't done that. So give it a good shake. You want to go, and I usually start at one corner. You don't want your dots to be too big. You want to keep them small as possible, and I'm just going to space them out. Not putting a ton. Try to keep them as uniform. Don't press too hard on the bottle or it will really go. Not putting too many, but a few. Because I want to leave some room for some enamel dots. I'll put one more right there. So this is runny, so don't try tipping it up or anything, because it will run. Get your heat gun going. And I know it's hard to hear over the heat gun. Before I get going, it will take a few minutes. You're used to doing embossing. It goes rather quickly. This takes a few minutes, but you actually can see it rise, and I will try to lift this up as we're going, okay? There they're starting. You see them rising? Now, if you leave it going too long, they'll pop like that one. But it still looks okay because snowflakes are all different shapes. And I've got them all puffed, and I'm going to hold this up even closer so you can see the puffiness. So, and you do get a little warpage, but it will all flatten out. So, the last thing you're going to do is the enamel dots. Now, I'm not going to put any enamel dots on my trees this time because I learned my lesson. So give this a good shake, and just like the other, you want to do small dots, but what it does do gives you that sparkling effect. And if they've got a little head on them, that's fine. Oop, you can pull it back in a little bit. I'm not too worried about it. It's snowflakes. Snowflakes come in all shapes and sizes. And I am going to put one up here on this, one here. They're not inside of the blue, so they won't change color. Do a couple bigger ones. But it does make your card sparkly. And it also helps finish off my blizzard. Okay, I think that's good. Now, you want to tap this a little bit from the underneath because it will help flatten out, not too much, but enough. You see some of the dots are starting to flatten out now. They're not leaving a point anymore. I do have this one little goober, but I'm not worried about it. So I've seen snow look like just splatting, so. But it really makes a cool effect. So those will dry, and you'll have all this texture on your card. So this is my Regal Reindeer. I can't tip him up yet because he's still wet. If you don't mind the dots being different colors, you do the green. If you want color on your tree, I would suggest going with some rhinestones possibly. You could do heat embossing, but if you put white powder on it, usually that turns a little bit green too. So I suggest rhinestones if you want light, bling in your trees. But either way, I mean, this looks fine. I'm going to use it. But this one, no bling in the trees. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you give this a try. If you don't have the stamp set, I'd really go for it. I love it. So, and I'm sure you'll be seeing me play with it or portions of it over the next few weeks since we are doing Christmas. So with all that being said, thanks again for joining me. And until next time, goodbye.